panel discussion which you are having is patent portfolio valuations, importance of IP and patents. We have the moderator, Gosia, Kulczycka, partner Hickman, Becker, Bingham, Ledesma, LLP, USA. Dr. Bijay Kumar Sahu, Head NRDC-Technology Innovation Support Center and IP Facilitation Center, NRDC, India. We are still waiting for Mahmoud Shaarawy. He is the Chief Legal and Compliance Officer, HSA Group, Egypt. We have Sivon, Kalminov, Director Patent Counsel, Canon INC, USA. And finally, we have Dr. Patnala, Ramachandra Murthy, Director, Head IPR Department, Neuland Laboratories Limited, India. So I would hand over the panel or the floor to Gosia, who will be moderating this panel. So Gosia, over to you.
All right, so let's start today. My slides disappeared again.
Yep.
All right, thank you. So today we will be talking about the importance of IP and patents, and in particular, we will talk about patent portfolio valuation. Next slide, please.
Yep.
This is our presentation outline. First, each speaker will introduce herself or himself. Very briefly, let's have everyone spend no more than 2-3 minutes on the introduction. Then we will move to the introduction to the patent valuation, what it is, how it works, and that I will be asking questions, and our participants are free to answer those questions. Then we have a couple of or few slides about statistical data, and then we open for additional questions. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Let's start from the speaker's introduction. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
I will start first. I am a partner at Hickman, Becker, Bingham, Ledesma law firm. I have a PhD in computer science and a JD, so I am an attorney. We are located in San Jose, California. My practice includes patent counseling, patent prosecution, with special expertise in computer networks and artificial intelligence. I have drafted many patents in those areas, also in other internet-related technologies, telecommunication, computer graphics, virtual machines, servers, routers, and so forth. I have a variety of clients, starting from large companies, from mid-size and ending on startup. My practice is basically about drafting patent applications and prosecuting them and counseling clients, making sure that they patent the valuable inventions that help them to achieve their business goals, which may be various goals. Sometimes it's just to increase the licensing, sometimes to be part of the merger or the acquisition, but we will get to it later. Now let's move to the next presenter, maybe Sivon. Would you like to say something about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Sivon Kalminov. I am the Director of Intellectual Property at Canon, USA. I oversee all of the in-house patent prosecution work at Canon, USA. That covers basically the broad scope of all of Canon's various technology areas. Glad to be with you today.
Thank you, Sivon. Murthy, would you like to say something about yourself?
Good evening, everyone, and my name is Dr. Murthy. I'm heading IPR department. I'm having almost 22 years experience in IP, product selection, portfolio, strategy, cost reduction, and legal. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Is anyone else willing to introduce himself?
Hi, good evening from India. I'm Dr. B.K. Sahu. I am from National Research Development Corporation of Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. NRDC primary role is to promote technology and technology transfer, support to MSME, startup and industry, and we support startup in IP and holding IP and also managing IP. And our role is mandate and mission is technology transfer from R&D labs to the industry through licensing. And I also look after WIPO Technology Innovation Support Center. And the center has established a close networking with academia, industry, and government as well as startup. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahu. May I have my slides again? Right? Let's move on. So let's start with the introduction to patent valuation. What is patent valuation? What is the meaning of it? What type of valuations are known? So on these slides, you have a very general approach for defining the patent valuation. Basically, in one context, there are two meanings for patent valuation. One is qualitative, another is quantitative. Qualitative is about comparing based on some sort of a score and how it compares to other patents, other portfolios of competitors, and so forth. Quantitative is monetary. It's basically about what is the monetary, about determining the monetary value of those patents. Let's pause on this slide for a moment, and let me ask maybe Murthy first. What is the value of your patent portfolio, and how do you define it?
Take that, just kind of get us started.
Thank you.
You know, from a patent valuation standpoint, there are a number of different factors that typically go into how the value of a patent can be determined. Some cases, we may want to look at how much do we want to potentially protect a particular product that it may be going out to the market. And depending on the value of that particular product to the overall company business, that is going to have a driving factor in terms of determining the value of any patents that may be associated with that particular product. There's also other factors that we look at in terms of potential. What's the potential of cross licensing in this particular case? And obviously, as one factor that can also be taken into consideration is, from a competitive product standpoint or a knockoff product standpoint, things like that is, how much do we want to potentially exclude or prevent, third parties from, practicing inventions that happen to be covered by our patents. So again, it's just there's a lot of different factors that go into determining a particular value that's associated with a particular patent, and it is typically a case-by-case basis that is taken under consideration.
Okay, thank you, Sivon. Appreciate it. Murthy, are you with us right now? Can you hear us? You can hear us. Can you answer this question? What is the value of...
What was the question actually?
Yeah, Gosia, please.
Okay, I saw Sahu. So the question is, what is the value of your patent portfolio and how do you define it? Please tell us more how it works in your company.
Thank you. I am having cold and cough, and unfortunately the video is also some issues are there. But thank you for bringing this topic. The topic is need of the hour to understand each other. Learning from each other is the best practice we can share. So for us, normally we do technology valuation rather than we call as it a patent valuation. But patent we take as a strategy. And that strategy create a long portfolio, particularly for fundraising, leverage business transaction, and also exit strategy for startups. And that gives opportunity for the merger and acquisition the industries. So, technology valuation, as far as the technology which was patented, we took it as an opportunity and evaluate, and we have a evaluation formulation and strategy. There are many series of issues that we consider so that we can take a patented technology as an innovative technology and we can do transfer and license to the industry. Then we can create an impact, particularly to the MSME and industry. So in that evaluation mechanism, we have many standards we normally consider, particularly the cost for technology validation, cost breakup, and process know-how evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahu. Now, how is connection with Murthy? Can he talk? Can he hear us? I'd like to get his take on his value of a patent portfolio. Murthy, can you answer this question? What is the value of your patent portfolio?
Dr. Murthy, can you hear us? He's lost it again, I believe.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so we can proceed.
When you get the connection with him, please let us know.
Yeah, sure.
So let's move to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
So this slide briefly explains explains one way of determining the value of the patent. So the patent or patent family or even patent portfolio may be evaluated using, for example, a market approach or an income approach, which is based on license analogy, or both. Typically, the evaluation method depends on a specific patent valuation scope. Would any of the speakers would like to comment on this slide on the patent valuation, how you determine the patent value? Murthy, can you hear us? Would you like to answer that?
Dr. Murthy? No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Okay, so as we get connected with Murthy again, Sivon, maybe you have some comments about valuation. Would you like to give us some comments?
Yeah, sure. So, as I previously indicated, there's different types of valuation. Obviously, it's monetary is part of it in terms of, how, once we get a patent, how are we going to potentially monetize it? And there are obviously different levels of monetization, licensing, blocking a competitor from entering it, what's the monetary advantage of doing that? So, those are factors that go into determining a particular patent or a patent portfolio for a particular technology area. And also, there's in terms of, let's say, when to value the patent, there are different potential steps along the entire patent prosecution trail, for lack of a better term, that one could use to determine, patent value. Obviously, before you file, there's a potential there that you can figure out, what's the best way for me to monetize and get my return of investment on this patent at, when you first file it. During prosecution, as you're crafting the claims, that's another place where you can start again looking at how am I going to monetize the scope of the claims I'm trying to get. And then obviously from a project standpoint, there are different steps along the way of a project in terms of, again, how do I monetize it? when the project first starts, what potential monetization aspects of this project do I have? As the project matures, there's going to be potentially several other additional patents that you could file. That again, you can look at the market approach. You can use a market approach, or again, perhaps a particular patent comes along in the process or of a project that may not necessarily protect a particular feature in the product, but may be very useful from an income approach or license technology. So again, it's just there's just various different factors, not only along the line of prosecuting a specific patent in terms of how am I going to determine the return of income, return of investment by monetizing this patent, but also from the bigger picture, from the product standpoint and the project standpoint, as the project moves along and matures, the same analysis goes. So again, as Gosia, you indicated in your chart in the last bullet, it really does depend on, what kind of value do I anticipate the particular scope of this particular patent, if for this particular project, is going to get me.
Thank you so much, Sivon. Appreciate it. Do we have an audio connection with Murthy? Let's talk about this slide. This is about patent valuation, but the point of interest here is how much do patents usually sell for. As you know, there is this whole sector of business that actually specializes in buying and selling patents. So they are called brokers. There are many law firms. There are many individual companies who actually specialize in buying patents from some companies or from some other traders and selling them to other institution or other company. And the cost of transactions is usually a mix of fixed cost and the percentage of the agreed transaction business. Basically, this is a big line of business. There is a lot going on in this area. The pricing model is different among the brokers. Typically, the pricing reflects the services that are delivered to a broker. Excuse me. In fact, a few months ago, I attended a webinar that was actually presented by one of the companies that actually specializes in buying and selling patents. They provided a great deal of information as to how the price is assigned to a patent portfolio based on what. So that would be the fixed cost, and also based on agreed transactions. Any comments on that? Murthy, can you hear us? Would you like to comment on those value of patent portfolio?
Sorry, unfortunately, I don't really deal in the area in terms of selling, buying patents. So in terms of, like using a broker. So unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of experience in this particular area. So I would have to kind of defer to my colleagues on this panel to kind of provide a little more information on this, because again, this particular aspect of any patent related work that we do is not really something that me and my team focus on. So I apologize that I can't really bring a lot to this particular slide.
No, please don't, but I value your opinion and thank you for letting us know that. Sure. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, some statistical data. Next slide, please. So on this slide, this is a courtesy of a company called AST. That's one of the brokerage firm that specializes in buying and selling patents. And Do we have your audio?
Yeah, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, we can. Dr. Sahu, right?
Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. There is some network issue is there here in my place of working. So sorry for that. And now you can ask me the question. I can respond to you.
All right, I'm glad. Okay, so let's ask the question that we posed a minute ago. So what is the value of your patent portfolio and how do you define it?
See, in general, people think that valuation of the patent means the whatever the sales data only. It's not like that. So the thing is, whatever the production we have given, whatever fencing we have made around that product also comes under the cost of the patent or valuation of the patent, because the fencing will help the production of your IP. So whatever that value should also combine along with the market value. So the market value plus fencing value gives the exact value of your product. Generally, people think about only the sales value as the patent value and give the valuation, but it's not correct. This is from my side.
All right, thank you. And since your audio is working at the moment, let's seize the moment and ask a second question about the role of IP due diligence in patent portfolio valuation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the thing is, see, due diligence is very important. If you don't make due diligence from time to time, there's always a chance of missing the date of maintenance of the patents, and there is a chance of other legal issues also there. For that reason, due diligence is very important for every 6 months, and it's very important, especially in IP valuation, because what happens if you don't do a proper IP valuation, definitely if you don't have a proper due diligence system, definitely it creates a lot of problem in creation of value.
All right. Anyone else would like to add with regard to the IP due diligence in patent portfolio valuation?
I just, from a due diligence standpoint, I think the one other potential aspect of due diligence, obviously, as was indicated previously, the maintenance fees, things like that. I think you could also potentially, under the umbrella of due diligence, talk about before you even file the patent that you're thinking of, is to understand, what potentially is already out there. By doing, an art search, or just having a basic good understanding of what is already described in the technology area. That way, when you do go start to prepare your patents or your patent portfolio, obviously that, depending on your understanding of what is already publicly known, you can determine, exactly, or you can maybe start having some sort of estimate as to what value this particular patent is really, is potentially going to have, given the understanding of what's out there. So again, that's what I would put potentially under the big broad umbrella of due diligence, especially for anybody that's working, in-house for a company, or or for a client. There's some due diligence there to make sure that the ultimate owner of that patent has a good understanding of what the potential value of that patent is once it issues, or hopefully issues, is going to be, given the known technology at the time that you're proceeding with patent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Back to this slide, if I can draw your attention to the slide. So what you see here in the first column is a list of different technology categories. We have audio, video, graphics, automotive, communication, components, general electronics, services, software, medical, and others. The second column is about medium price, and that's per patent family. Sometimes the patent family is not just 1 or 2 patents, but there might be a quite large family. So this is the median price of the medium-size patent family. And this, as you can see from this slide, the highest prices are for software patents. Interestingly enough, they appear to be most expensive in terms, this is the asking price, okay, and that data is from year 2020. So for the software patent family, the median price is $241,000 and some $945, where the average price, note that's the last column, it's 321 or 322. So the average is actually higher than the median. That, of course, it's a statistical method of computing the value. Now, very highly are also priced the patents in the area of services. Is also somewhat surprising, and that includes all kinds of services, telecommunication services, even food delivery services, and shopping services as well. Also, very highly are priced the medical patents. Again, for the average price, you have $268,000 or so for the medical patents, and that's in the area of medical devices, but also in the area of drugs and treatments. Next slide. May I have, yes. Now, it's interesting to actually take a look at the statistical information related to who the sellers are. And that information on a slide represents the information that was gathered between year 2010 and 2020. And the biggest portion of the sellers is actually made up of the practitioners. That is around 63% or so. But there is also a large portion that includes non-practicing entities, also individuals. That is kind of surprising, I think. And there are also universities and others. Next slide, please. In terms of the buyers, meaning those who are buying the patents on the market, again, the biggest portion consists of practicing entities, and there are also large portion non-practicing entities. There is a portion of defensive consortium. Surprisingly, it's quite large. What it tells you is that many patents that, let's say, Air Force industry is using is not developed by them, but just bought from others. Next slide, please. And this is about patent deals. What is meant here is a number of patents that being transacted, and the data pertains to year 2020. The leader here is a healthcare and pharma. Software is a little bit below that. There is also a large chunk of communication deals, but definitely the leader here is healthcare and pharma. Sivon, maybe you have some comments on it. What's actually jumps at you when you see this slide? Are you surprised by that information? Any thoughts?
Sure. Actually, there are a couple things in the slide that I am a little surprised, and not in just this one, but in the previous two slides, there are a couple things that are, but I was a little surprised to see. With this particular chart, I'm not that surprised that healthcare and pharma, back in 2020, in the last 3 years, has been a very hot field, for lack of a better term, from a patent standpoint. So I'm not surprised to see that health and pharma is it has the highest number here versus some other things like communication or wireless. Those particular technology fields, it seems to have their peaks and valleys. But again, the health and pharma has been a very hot field, shall we? Again, for lack of a better term. In some of your other charts, the previous one, in terms of
Can we go to the previous ones?
yeah, if you can go to back one slide, if you don't mind, possible.
Yes, Kiran, would you be so kind and go to slide 13? Yes, that one. Thank you. No, not that one. Slide 13, 1-3.
Yeah. Actually, the thing that does surprise me a little is I would have expected, frankly, to have seen the non-practicing entities, the NPE percentage, to be more than what it is compared to practicing entities, just because of how, unfortunately, from an NPE standpoint, how litigious, especially in the U.S., most NPEs are. Again, and obviously that's their business model, is to buy and obtain patents from other people and then turn around and enforce them. So that's why I was a little surprised, to see that the percentage in your chart is not surprising, but just that it's a little less than what practicing entities. Again, I would have thought that it would have been a little closer. I do understand that the defensive consortiums, obviously their business model is to obtain patents, and then members of that consortium, should they ever, is from a protection standpoint, so I can understand that. So again, again, from a surprise standpoint, I am a little surprised that the NPE percentage is not higher than what it is. But then again, on the other hand, I have seen over the last couple of years the rate of NPE litigation has, I think, dropped off a little bit from previous years. So maybe that's those two particular pieces of data may correlate with one another. But again, that's probably, in terms of just looking at the charts, which thank you very much. They're very informative and have really good information. Those are kind of like I'm not surprised and I am a little surprised aspects of the charts.
Can we go one slide back to slide 12, please? This one.
Again, I'm not overly surprised, obviously, that the sellers are the practicing entities. That's the overwhelming, because a non-practicing entity, frankly, I'm actually maybe a little surprised that that's as high as it is, because it's their business model, again, as I said, is the opposite. Again, in the U.S., it's the opposite. They are buying, not really selling. I'm not really sure who an NPE would be wanting to sell a patent. The only thing I could think of there would be that they don't have any use anymore for a particular patent they acquired. But again, from a practicing entity, that's one way for a practicing entity to monetize the patents that they have spent money on, is going ahead and selling them. Also, I'm also a little. It's interesting that the individual slice is as small as it is, because I would have expected that individuals that maybe have been a little higher percentage, because obviously as an individual, you may not necessarily have the means to enforce your patent. You might want to go ahead and try to sell it to someone you think might have a better chance of enforcing it, and as well as get some income from that. So again, those are kind of my comments and perceptions on this particular chart. But again, thank you for presenting them. It's very interesting information.
I'm glad you are commenting on this. When I looked at those charts, I I noticed this defensive consortium, that they are actually selling very little, buying maybe a little bit more, and as Sivon pointed out, maybe that's because they just sell the technology that is not useful for them anymore for some reason. I just wonder what other reasons might be. I would suspect that they are at the cutting edge of technology, but if they are just buying or mostly buying that technology, that would probably that could be also explained as a function of not having many research and development centers on their own, which is not the case. As far as I know, many companies, defensive companies have research and development centers, and I think they do develop or harvest new patents. So that is somewhat surprising, as Sivon pointed out. In terms of the individuals, I actually wonder how accurate the chart is. Again, it's not my place to comment on the accuracy, but I wonder if the price of the patents themselves has something to do with it, because individuals usually have individual patents, not so much as groups or portfolios or families of patents. So if you add just some individual patents, maybe that is the contributor to the overall relatively small pie chart slice that is assigned to the individuals. I don't know. Kiran, do we have someone else who is connected with us who could comment? Do we have?
No, as you know, there was some connection issues, so we don't have anyone. So you and Sivon are there only. Yep.
All right. So let's get back to the slides, please. Okay, keep moving. Let's go to slide number 15. Thank you. So this is about assets, patent assets, and that's for transactions. And this is interesting because in comparison with the previous slide, this one shows that it is software that is the leader in terms of the patent assets that are being transacted. On the previous slide, we had healthcare, and can we go to slide 14, please? One above, yes, that one. So in terms of the deals, healthcare is the leader, software is on the third position. Go back to slide 15, please. But in terms of the assets value, or account of the assets, healthcare is not the leader, it's the software that is actually leader. And software and electronics. This is what I would have expected. Sivon, what are your comments on this slide?
It's still interesting that the two don't track, but by patent assets we're talking about the value, right? So if that's the case, then I can understand to a point where while comparing the two charts, while pharma and healthcare lead in one category from an asset standpoint, just given the current environment. This is the 2020 statistics, so I presume, again, not wanting to get into the accuracy of it, I presume it's potentially reflecting some things that were going on in the 2018, 2019, and maybe leading into 2020. I can see back in that time frame, software at that particular point in time, there was a lot of things going on in the software realm as far as patents go. So I can see where some software related patent assets would have increased over pharma. So yeah, like I said, your point is an interesting when you look at the two together, but it is somewhat understandable when within the context of what's each chart is supposed to represent.
Thank you. Yeah, another thought that I had when I looked at those charts, I just wonder what kind of criteria they used to determine what is the software asset, what is the electronics asset, and what is a computing system asset. I kind of felt, and tell me what your thoughts are about it, but I felt like there must have been a clear definition there, because even semiconductors, that should be a part of electronics in my mind.
Right. Yes.
And
yeah. No. That. Yeah. I'm looking at that. Yeah. Unless under electronics, that could have just been a big, what they call a catch-all, that it covers. Like for instance, for us, we have cameras, we have printers. Standalone printers. We do multifunction machines. We do even medical equipment. All of that theoretically could fall under electronics. So yeah, it would, that could be just a big catch-all. Where I agree, semiconductors are under the umbrella of electronics. So maybe for some reason they decided to break out the semiconductors from the rest of the electronics umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for your comments. And there is also this category communication, and I wonder how that is defined, because that might be a part of computing system as well.
Yes.
But again, unfortunately, we don't have more information about it. But so it's kind of difficult to interpret that chart without that part of that piece of information. But I think it is definitely undisputable that software, electronics, and computing systems are the leaders in terms of the patent assets being transacted, bought and sold. Thanks, Sivon. Next slide, please. Now we have a couple of questions. Let's go to the first one. Next slide, please. Now, we partially answered that question, but Sivon, if you have some additional comments about
Yeah,
this.
sure. I mean, again, this is not, this particular comment is not reflective of my particular company's policy. This is just my personal take on answering the question of why does a company need to know its value. I think a company needs to understand the value of its patents for several reasons. One is you have to remember that companies have budgets, so they have and they have specific R&D budgets. So if you're going to spend X amount of money for an R&D project, or then that's going to have potential patents. You want to know what kind of valuable patents are going to potentially come out of this. So is obviously you're going to put the money into R&D, but you are going to want to know, hey, what's the potential of getting a valuable patent out of this? And again, the value of the patent, there's different types of value to a particular patent. So that's probably one of the main things is, you're spending a lot of money on a particular project or particular research. So for return of investment, how are you going to monetize that, the money that goes into that? One of it is potentially patents. And then obviously, if you're gonna consider a patent as a potential return of investment on your R&D investment, you're going to need to know, or you're going to need to try to estimate what's the value of those patents moving forward. So again, that's kind of one example of where a company would want to know the value of its patents. Also, the other thing too is, if you're going to get a patent, if you want to license it, you're probably going to want to know how, what's the value of this patent, so you can, when you go into negotiations to license it, you have some idea of, you know, what monetary value am I going to go into this negotiation with, that I want to get as far as a license fee. Also, if I'm going to potentially, let's say I have a portfolio that I really don't need anymore and I want to sell it just to, you know, help bottom line revenue, again, I'm going to need to know what the value of the patents I'm going to sell, so that when I again go into negotiation to sell, I have a target price that I want to get for those patents. So again, those are just some examples of where I personally think a company would want to know what the value of their patents are.
Yeah, very good points. Thank you. Next slide, please. How much time does it take to value a patent portfolio? This is a very broad and open-ended question. You can imagine how difficult it might be to answer that question. But let's give it a shot. What do you think, Sivon?
You know, again, I don't really know that there is a set fee. I can't, you know, I don't think, you know, somebody can tell you, yeah, it's going to take me 2 weeks to figure out, you know, the total value of this particular portfolio. And again, are we talking, because a lot of it is, are we talking about the entire portfolio?
And how big is the portfolio?
Yeah, are we talking about when we talk about a portfolio, we're talking about a specific technology area, and even within the technology area, you know, as we talked about in the previous slide, electronics. Well, under electronics, for example, that, you know, I could have a portfolio under the electronics umbrella of 1,000 patents. But in reality, what I'm really trying to value is the subset of 200, maybe there's 200 in there that I'm more concerned about. So again, I don't think, as you indicated, there's not a set time that says it's going to take me 2 weeks to do this. It really, you know, it really is, it's on a case by case basis. With a lot of different factors, how much, you know, how many patents are we actually looking at? What do I want to, you know, what am I going to do with these patents? Things like that. So, you know, and unfortunately, I don't have direct interaction with those that do that. So maybe Gosia, maybe you have a little more experience in terms of having done a value assessment for a client. But again, to me, I don't know that I could put a specific time frame on doing a valuation analysis.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree. This is too broad of a question. It's impossible to assign some timetable or time range even for the evaluation of a patent portfolio. You know, some companies patent in a very narrow area, but they, let's say, file lots of continuation applications. So you can imagine that many of them are interrelated. But if you have, let's say, 100 or 200 individual patents in a portfolio or in a family, then determining the value of it takes time. And the factors that we discussed at the beginning of this webinar need to be considered. And some of them are sometimes going through all these factors. It's quite challenging and difficult. So it takes time. Another situation might be where there is an individual who has one patent or maybe two in a family of patents, and that may be relatively easy to process and to determine the value of that patent, but maybe not. What if there are many competitors in that area? What if there is that technology is somewhat overlapping with technologies of the competitors? So this is a very difficult question to answer. And as Sivon pointed out, it varies from case to case and it depends on the specifics of the individual case. Next slide, please. what is the cost of patent valuation? Again, I understand that that may not be the question that the current speakers are very that have sufficient background to answer, but I think maybe we can give a shot. What do you think, Sivon?
Again, because I'm not directly involved in that, I can't. If you're talking about costs from like how much is it going to cost to conduct the valuation analysis, that I don't know. You know, in terms of what it's going to do. What I can tell you, I think, from a maybe not so much as a cost standpoint that I'm going to have to pay someone, is more than likely you're going to have, you know, you're going, especially for instance, let's say if it's a company, you may have to have the inventors involved in analyzing the claims and getting a good understanding of what the claim scope, because obviously if the value of the patent is going to be based solely on what the scope of the claims are. So somebody's going to have to go through the claims to determine what the scope is before you can even put a monetary value on that. You have to first do that. So there's going to be a time cost associated with that. And then the question is, who's going to do that? If you're, let's say you're a company and you're going to have in-house individuals do it, or you're going to have inventors do it, or the engineers do it, then you know that it's their time that's going to cost. If you're going to have, if you're going to want to pay an attorney to do that, a patent attorney, an outside counsel to do that, well, obviously you're going to be paying that attorney time to spend going through and analyzing it. So again, I don't have a particular monetary value attached to it because I don't specifically do that kind of work, but I expect it could be quite expensive just in terms of the time it's going to take to analyze the claims for the particular patents in question. And again, that time is going to be money, but it's also going to be time. And who's going to have the time to go do that?
Exactly. Excellent point. I see some questions from the audience.
Yeah. So let me just read it out for you, Gosia. So it's a question from Dr. Claudia Duffy. So she has a question that the discussion on valuing patents focuses on corporations. What about SMEs? They need to know the value of their patents to defend their company valuation when raising equity investment. And she has another question. What methods are used when valuing patents? That is from Dr. Claudia.
Yeah, in terms of, let's take one at a time. What about SMEs? They need to know the value of their patents to defend their company valuation when raising equity investment. Yeah, that's a very good question. What are your thoughts? Because yes, we so far talked about patents for corporation in general. Sivon, what do you think?
I'm just trying to think. I guess I'm not sure there's really going to be a difference in terms of. I guess I'm not sure exactly what the question is directed at. I don't think there's again, I'm not involved in this particular aspect of patent practice, so I'm kind of I'm not indicating how our company does this for those that do it in my company, but I'm not sure I would see a difference between how a corporation goes about doing evaluation and how an SME would. I'm not sure there's a distinction in terms of, you know, depending on who you are, you know, entity X is going to do valuation this way and entity Y is going to do valuation another way. I think, you know, I think there are pretty common ways of doing valuation of patents that would be applicable regardless of what kind of entity you are.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with Sivon. Small and mid-sized enterprises, I don't see how they can be treated differently than corporations in general. You know, sometimes the size of the company is not that critical from the perspective of of company valuation and raising equity investment. I understand that perhaps for small companies and startups in particular, it might be difficult to establish their position until they actually have enough support from the venture capital. But I have to tell you, I had several clients who actually have had startup companies and who were patenting left and right, which means a lot. And they were doing that only because they were hoping that they would be acquired by a large company. And that actually happened. Once they get a portfolio of, again, it really depends on the technology and the type of the company and the circumstances, as Sivon pointed out, may depend on how important that patent is for the current technology in general. But when this startup, for example, has 5, 6, 7, or maybe 20 patents, they are in a very good position to start the investment conversation with other, or merger and acquisition, and so forth. But again, we will also were hoping to have input from 2 other gentlemen who were assigned to this panel. But that's the best we can, Sivon and I can answer at this point.
Right.
There was also another.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just one other thing in terms of obviously a corporation is probably more than likely is going to have a bigger budget to do some sort of evaluation, whereas an SME, depending on the SME's current situation, they may not have the financial resources to do as deep and as lengthy a valuation as a corporation can be, again, from a budget standpoint. So obviously from an SME, they may need to get a little creative in terms of, how you going to finance doing that evaluation. Obviously, if it's one, if we're talking, 1 to 10 patents that a SME wants to try to get a value on, that might be, that's something that could be potentially done in a more cost-effective way than if an SME happens to have 100 patents. So again, that to me, that may be one significant difference is, how much money is available and what are the finances are to actually go through and proceed with the patent evaluation analysis. And I see in the chat that someone indicated that there are potentially some free patent valuation, rough valuation tools that are available. So that's a possibility just to give someone a rough idea of what they're looking at. But I do know there are also some paid services that will do an evaluation potentially for you. So that's something that you might want to consider is, what's the cost of having a third party service do it versus you going potentially and hiring an attorney or a firm to do it.
Exactly, very good point. And during our presentation, we talked about different companies that just specialize in providing patent valuation. AST was one of them that I mentioned, but there are many others.
Yeah, Gosia, so there is another question. Dr. Claudia just mentioned that there are companies valuing patents, but rough valuation are also provided by various patent search database. See PatSnap. That's what she mentioned.
Right.
Yes. So I guess this concludes our presentation. Sivon, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. And
leading this conversation with me. Kiran, thank you for making the arrangements. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. So just before we conclude, so can we just look onto the camera and let's capture this moment for this record. So yeah, just give me a second. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gosia. Thank you so much, Sivon. Thank you to Dr. Patnala and Dr. Sahu as well. Thank you so much.